This is Dr. Garth Fisher with The Cutting Edge, and we're here today. I'm going to introduce Sebastian Siegel, who is a British-American director, producer, author, keynote speaker, TEDx speaker, but also a lifelong athlete and fitness advocate. He's been featured on 100 covers of numerous magazines. He's a man who blends discipline of the body and exploration of the mind, merging physical intensity and philosophical depth. Sebastian has wrote, produced, and directed the acclaimed feature film Grace and Grit, which we watched, adapted from the true story by Ken Wilber. He's premiering at the iconic Chinese theater IMAX. The film now streams globally on IMAX and on Apple and Amazon. His series, The 8 Questions, with 51 episodes streaming on YouTube, challenges audiences to reflect on love, mortality, and what it means to live consciously. Through his films, his talks, and his writing, Sebastian explores what drives us in love and relationships, asking the deepest questions about human connection, meaning, and transformation. And I think Ken Wilber described you as Sebastian Siegel as an integral artist driving consciousness evolution through that film. And as John Mackey, founder of Whole Foods, said, Grace and Grit, this movie will shake you and maybe even awaken you. It is a must-see for anyone interested in love or consciousness, and that was the case for me. And thank you and welcome. Thank you for coming. Welcome to the show.
Garth, it's great to be here.
Great to have you here. I will say that we're going to get into, he's been featured on the covers of 100 magazines, from Men's Fitness RX to Ironman magazine, more than almost any other natural athlete in history, which is pretty amazing. And then we're going to talk about that. I did make a deal with him before. As you can see, he's in a sport coat. I promised not to come in without my shirt on because I didn't want him to feel bad and have my two-pack might make him feel uncomfortable with his 10-pack. So I promised I'd put a shirt on, so I'm glad you even put a coat. But anyway, that's pretty incredible when you think about the covers you've been on, and I know you're very athletic. And how did the fitness become the driving force in your life, and how did all these magazine covers happen? You must have started at a young age, although you look very young. So
Thank you. I think early on, my stepfather lived in South Texas and my father lived in Hawaii, and they were two very different worlds. My father was sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and my stepfather was just stoic and discipline and work ethic. And there were certain codes and rules to live by in South Texas that were very different from Hawaii.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think to sort of reconcile these two identities as a young boy, I had to find some sort of true north or continuity. And part of that practice really became just exercise, running as fast as I could, swimming as far out as I could, and then falling in love, if you will, with that feeling of saying, oh, wow, I can touch the world. I can control what's happening inside of me based on how I apprehend things, and physicality and the endorphins that come with that are a big part of that. I think that was my engagement with it early on, where I think as early as 9, 10, 11, 12, I was like, this for me, just doing physical things that are hard and rigorous. And then I was very fortunate when I moved to Los Angeles in terms of how the magazine covers happen. One of the last covers that Joe Weider chose before he passed was my first cover for Men's Fitness, which was April of 2000. And then I did over 100 in like 5 or 6 years or something like this. And it was really fortunate, lucky, if you will. It was right place, right time. Before social media, there was this sort of decade right there, the kind of 2000 to 2015, where publishing was still happening before it disappeared. And then I was built enough to be on the covers of Ironman and Muscle and Fitness, but also accessible enough and natural to be on Men's Fitness so many times.
So I don't know if you know the answer to this, but you're probably first. Who's second with the most number of covers? I was trying to put this in perspective.
I mean, there are a lot of guys, who have done a lot, obviously, in professional bodybuilding, and then there are athletes who have done a number of covers, who have like won the Super Bowl or something like
this.
But
100, that's a lot.
It's a lot. I was lucky, and a lot of those covers will print. Like, let's say if I shoot one for Men's Fitness, then that'll end up a slightly different variation: Men's Fitness, Italy, Spain, Mexico, etc. So it's the sort of range there was these magazines are printing all over the world. But there were a number of guys, certainly Mike O'Hearn was somebody in the bodybuilding world in the 90s and then 2000s, who's probably more than anyone. And then myself, and then Greg Plitt, who passed away, did probably, close to 100.
So obviously athletics has been a very important part of your life. And with that comes, nutrition, watching what you eat. And you're very disciplined with that and healthy. When did that started at the same time and you've just maintained that through all of your life?
I used to, when I lived in Hawaii, I loved eating rice. And it was literally sort of serendipitous that when I was 18, I was in boarding school in Connecticut and I was eating rice and tuna. And it was so dry that I started to choke. And I have this very rare condition that I think my grandmother had where the esophageal
spasm.
Yeah, it closes. And so water doesn't help, but it makes it worse. I just have to relax, right? And I was like, what is this? I didn't know what it was. And then it happened again and again and again. And then the pain was so intense that I started to notice what are the things that I'm doing that will make that happen. And it was being dehydrated, slouching while I eat, and eating food that was really dry. So then at that juncture, I stopped eating rice. I stopped eating any dry foods like dry tuna, dry fish, dry chicken. And I started upping my fat. So I do a lot of oil on everything that I ate. But I noticed that if I was doing a lot of oil, I couldn't also do a lot of starch. I had to do one or the other. And so just by sheer sort of it working out well, then I noticed, all right, wow, I've got a lot of energy eating really high fat and really low starch. And this is before anyone was talking about the kind of keto diet. I just did it naturally and enjoyed eating that way and then stuck with it. And then the response to that then was my body also changing.
And what are you continuing this type of diet now, or which diet have you had the most of your life? What diet are you on now?
I'm mostly.
Or how do you eat?
I'm mostly plant-based.
Okay.
And I'll do a little bit of seafood. I'll do a high amount of fat, and all the starch that I'm getting is from like beets, carrots, beans.
Okay. And you're working out how often? How many hours a day?
Pretty much every day, about an hour. And Gold's Gym in Venice. If it's an off day, like today, later this afternoon at sundown, I'll go to the Santa Monica stairs. And I keep it fun. I've never done the same workout twice. So today when I go to the stairs, a couple guys will meet me down there and we'll do singles and then we'll walk every other and then we'll sprint them and then I'll carry one of the guys up the stairs on my back and then I'll carry the other guy up the stairs on my back, like walking every other, and then I'll lunge maybe for a while. But it'll be about an hour, 15 minutes and a little stretching afterwards.
That's a big workout, going up those stairs just by yourself. I remember I did a little workout where you get these, I don't know if you've ever done this, you take 10-pound bags of sand, those bags of sand for, when there's a flood, and you take 10-pound bags and you hold them up for 10 minutes on each arm, and it's pretty hard to do.
That's tough.
Then you take 5-pound bags and you hold those up for 15 minutes on each arm. Then you take 1-pound sandbags and you hold them up for 20 minutes on each arm, and I would do that. And once I did that, I'd start putting sand in the bags.
I was thinking, like, that's really, really hard.
Yeah, well, I can't imagine. I've done those stairs. I think I can go them up 4 times in Santa Monica. It's an amazing workout, but there's no way I'm carrying anybody that I care about up those stairs because they're going to come down and be broken when I fall. So do you see your training more as being just physical, or is it mental, emotional, spiritual? How do you connect that?
It's a great question. I think it's really the converse, and the physicality is a byproduct of the love for the process, right? That I, as a kid, loved this thing that I think so many people who work out really hard are saying, okay, wow, this makes me feel okay. There's a challenge at home or a challenge with work and anxiety. I'm just going to go for a run, or go work out, or lift weights, or do a triathlon or something like this. And then obviously the positive feedback loop is so strong there that the endorphins, the serotonin, and then the transformation in physicality happens. And so I think the feedback loop is so positive on so many levels that it stays. Yeah.
So you've done triathlons?
I've actually never competed.
No.
So all the sports I've done are independent, but some of the greatest athletes in the world, from boxers and fighters and triathletes, have worked out with me in Hawaii here. But I've done like the Waikiki rough water swim, which is the swim portion of the original Ironman. So it's 2.4 miles across Waikiki Bay. But I've done that swim, I don't know, 80 times or something like that, probably on my own or with friends, and really trying to push myself. I think the competition for me, I like to push myself to the limit. So if I go somewhere that's gorgeous and I see like you traveling all these beautiful places, and I might pick a bay and say, I'm going to go from this side of the bay to that side of the bay. Yeah. And that's the adventure. I don't want to know too much about the metrics, about how far it is, about the speed. I don't like to track any of those things. I don't track calories. I don't track my weight. I don't track reps, because then it becomes like an obligation. It becomes like a job. And then it moves from sort of something that's intuitive and in here to something that's totally up here in the head. Yeah, and so I try to take all that element out of it and keep it playful.
Yeah, but you're very disciplined, but you're not constrained. You're just able to do what you want to do. But you've been doing this so long with your body and your health and your fitness that you really know where you're going to be and how to what you're going to do. What's the biggest misconception people have that you, in your opinion, about health and fitness?
And it's such an important question for today, because I think so many people look at it and you'll see a lot of this sort of broad pop influencers and sort of health people online saying, do this, do this, do this. And it all becomes prescriptive, like, eat this or take this. And the number of people that I think, in terms of trying to forge a lifelong relationship to health and fitness, are not looking lifelong. They're following someone online, and that person's taking X amount of drugs or taking some new product, and then they jump on it, and then it goes great for 6 months or 48 months. And you think 48 months, that's like a short car lease, and somebody's gambling this with their body, and I'm not advocating for something or not something, but I've never taken any drug, no testosterone, no hormones, zero, right? I drink very little caffeine even. And it's hard, it's tough. And each year after, in my 40s, it becomes tougher and tougher and tougher. But I like the challenge, right? I'm not in it to do a certain number of reps or to, look a certain way. It's just staying in it, right? If you're going to climb Everest every day, your legs are going to get in great shape, right? If you're going to, chop wood every day, your arms are going to be, your body's going to be in great shape. So I think the biggest misconception is that people are looking for a short response to say, I'm going to get in this great shape and I'm going to maintain, quote unquote. And I think that the irony with maintain is, like, if you're an Olympic athlete and you win the gold medal, you can't go out now and maintain that. You have to push as hard as humanly possible to even come close to that. And one day you might run faster or you might not. So I think it's about really falling in love with that process. And the misconception is people are looking at it from the outside in.
It's great that you keep it fresh like that. And it's probably more exciting and easier to do, although it's hard to do. But you've seemed to perfect it. You talk about the 5 stages of love. It's a very interesting, kind of title. I want to hear about that. We've all been in love. Some of us have fallen in and out. Some have been lucky and unlucky. But what are your 5 stages? Let's go through that a little bit.
Absolutely. I did this 20-year study on love, and it's really articulated partly in this series, the 8 questions on YouTube, and also in Grace and Grit, the true story, which you both watched. And I really, in that study, sort of wanted to look at, well, what is happening here? Everybody uses this word. I love my dog. I love my shoes. I love pancakes. I love my girl, this kind of thing.
Right.
And what is it that we're getting at, And so when I was looking at between 2 human beings, trying to identify stages, like what are these sequential things that occur? And so the 5 stages that I identified in this study, the first being romantic, and I'll go over each one briefly. And then the second one being passionate, and then courageous is the third, and then selfless, and then transcendent is the 5th. And the first one, just in very, truncated, romantic love is this ideal that we see a picture of somebody, or we see somebody somewhere, a man or woman, and it's a total projection of that human being. It has nothing to do with him or her. You meet briefly at a party, you say hello, and then you have all these ideas about what that's going to be.
It's in your brain.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And all the fantasies and are sort of written about this kind of love, right? And the next stage of love is passionate love, the second stage, which is interesting because then this is really also called evolutionary love, because this is the desire to mate. That maybe you like the biome, you're attracted to the person, right? There's this chemistry, this chemical, and that's this thing that kind of keeps the species perpetuating, right? Passionate love. But it's interesting because passionate love, even the root of that, passio, means to suffer. And we all know that experience where you're in love, you feel quote unquote in love, but it's this passionate love that hurts so much. And that's like the sort of requisite, like I miss this person, or it's, there's these conflicts going on there. And so many of our love songs really and poems are written about that, right? And a lot of movies also based on that kind of love. And then the third stage of love is courageous love, where now we hit this point where we say, okay, there's this other person here that has nothing to do with me, that's a totally different person and has different ideals and different priorities. And you know what? It's going to hurt sometimes. We're going to bump elbows sometimes being in this relationship, but I'm going to be courageous. I'm going to stay in it. It might be good for me. It might not be. I don't know. But I'm learning something here about myself. And so then we go into courageous love. We say, I'm going to stick with this. I'm going to be committed to this. I'm in this. And that's the third stage. And then the fourth stage is selfless love, what really starts to get interesting, where we say, okay, now there's this third form of intelligence in the relationship. There's me and the other. And the third form is this us, which is a totally different identity that transcends and includes both me and the other. And I'm going to sacrifice some of these aspects of myself in order to become more, to be part of this us. So that hierarchically, I'm going to hold sometimes this us above me because I love this vehicle and what I'm becoming in this. And that's selfless love, because we let go of parts of the self to become part of this greater identity, this us. And then the fifth stage of love, transcendent love, is really fascinating. It's where we arrive to this space where what Martin Buber calls the I-thou relationship, where we have this experience of spirit or God or the great mother or the great father in the relationship with the other, right? That he or she may just really bother us in some moment, but we're looking at, you're looking at her, you're looking at your wife, and you're thinking, you know what? I love this. This is the great mother. I'm not just loving her. I'm loving all the women in the world. I'm loving archetypally, really, the great woman, that. And what's amazing about this stage of love is that it primes us to be able to experience that more deeply with all others, with our colleagues, with our friends, even having a profound relationship, with the male or female archetype can allow us to have a better relationship with the father, with the male friends, with the female friends, et cetera, with the daughter, with the son, et cetera, like this. And I think that the one misconception about these stages of love is that we leave one and we graduate then to the other and the others don't matter. It's the opposite, that they all have to be reintegrated every day, right? And certainly, you're also, like myself, somebody who's been in long-term committed relationships, right? And this is what I like, because I seek depth, that the excitement and the chemistry happens there, right? With the closeness and the vulnerability and the courage, and that we have to still drive romantic love and passionate love and courageous love and selfless love and transcendent love.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if this was sequential, because some people, I'm sure, and me included, have been in relationships where you don't get to all those stages, or maybe you jump a stage and you're into the passionate first or whatever it is. But obviously you want to get to stage 5, transcendental, because it seems like that's the spot where you appreciate and you reflect and you're more in depth, in touch with everything, and able to love your partner more and love yourself more. And you've got to love yourself to be able to love somebody else. But you've kind of studied this over 20 years, you said.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting because I've seen, you're so strong, right, and successful and graceful. And you're, an amazing husband to a woman, and you have had practice at it. And you're an amazing father. And I've thought of, in the relationships that I've had, I've been committed and loved incredible women, and learned so much in every relationship. And had in some, like in the way that you reference to, have had relationships where I experienced transcendent love, but maybe not selfless love. In other words, that I thought, this is a dangerous relationship for me to be in. This probably doesn't agree with a lot of things, but I'm loving this woman. I'm in loving that experience.
So what do you mean by being dangerous? Like, how would it be dangerous? Like, you might get your feelings hurt. You're going in too deep. They're not able to follow. You're not able to follow the direction they are. But when it's dangerous, what does that mean?
Yeah, great. More that the individual, let's say in this case, for me, the woman, I say there are certain hardware or patterns that are so deeply set. For example, the woman's resent of her father.
Right.
That if she's ready to overcome that and wants to overcome that with me, but she's going to take that initiative to overcome that, fantastic. But if she's not going to take that initiative to overcome that, then there's going to be a battle with the male archetype, in which case I'm the man now in her life. And if that battle is going to be with me, it's just not going to work. And so I don't want to have selfless love in this case, but I can experience transcendent love and courageous love. In other words, I can love her, but I can say, you know what, I'm not going to sacrifice parts of myself to stay in this, because ultimately this is going to be more painful than it will procure growth for both of us.
Right. This is Dr. Garth Fisher. I'm here with Sebastian Siegel. He's an acclaimed filmmaker. He's also done a lot of studies. We're talking about the 5 stages of love, and he's a real expert looking into consciousness, human consciousness, which is involved in all this. Okay, so go back with what we were talking about, the dangers, and we all know it when there's, we all, including me, have, software problems where things are just not, it could be hardware, and software, but we all have problems. And, it's like Joel Osteen used to say, I thought he had a great quote. He said, "You'll never find anybody that's got more than 80% right. 20% of the stuff you're just gonna have to deal with, work around, work with, ignore, forgive, whatever. But if you can get 80% of it right, then you're in a really good spot in a relationship." And most people lose relationships because they go looking for the 20%, they find that, and then they lose the 80%. And, I agree with that. I think that's very true. And I've been lucky enough, I think, in my recent, with my wife, that I'm in the 90% range, 95%. So I've been very, very lucky and fortunate with that. But it takes, love takes work, it takes practice, it takes, here I am talking to you about love and you're the expert with it, but it takes work and practice, a lot of luck. And it also takes the ability to look at yourself and know that, you're not perfect either. You have to love yourself, but you have to also change and grow, and to be able to present something that might allow you to be us, which is your 4th stage, right?
Yes.
4th stage.
And that what you're saying that Joel said, and he's wonderful, and I've corresponded a little bit with them and with Lakewood Church to do something there. And he's, a powerful speaker that truncates and makes, sort of simplifies things on a lot of levels. And I think that 80-20 is an interesting statement, because really what he's pointing at there is the relationship with God is the most important, or spirit, or however we want to look at that. And if you can experience that through your lover, right, you're hitting already 75%, like you're hitting so much, because you look at like rats and dogs and all these animals, they're all going to stage 2. They're all passionate, they're all mating, they're all reproducing, right? And that's so little. That's so, like, there's 8 billion people in the world because that drive is so strong. So that's commonplace. But, what you're alluding to also there is saying, yes, so many people are focusing on that 20%. And that's like the most common thing. Like, you can build that, you can find that. It's so important, it's fundamental. But it doesn't have the depth, and it doesn't have the substantive sort of reinforcement that can allow a relationship to carry through. Whereas the stages like 4 and 5 do, they allow those other bonds to become deeper and stronger.
So what gave you the drive to look into all this, to learning about stages of love? What propelled you into this? And that's an interesting question for me.
When I think early on as a kid, my relationship, I think, with my mother's amazing. She's smart and she's, disciplined and all those things, but she's very British and she's very, sort of formal and sort of, shut off in certain ways, that certain things are just not allowed on an intimate level. And then my stepfather was also very stoic. And then I started to fall in love with, girls early on, and wanted to be with one girl. Like in kindergarten, I had a crush on a girl. And it was my fantasy to be with her forever, you know? Yeah. And then, in 5th grade and in 8th grade.
Already transcendental.
I was like, and I was this romantic, and then I got my heart broken a million times, right? And I thought, what's going on here? Like, what is it that's really happening here, right? What is this thing? And then you look around, and there's millions of books and plays and architecture and love songs and movies. And like, you think about like Rainer Maria Rilke or Khalil Gibran, right? Some of the most beautiful, tender poetry that's ever been written. Both those guys, no kids. Both those guys, heartbreak after heartbreak with women. Just like relentless.
Crazy.
Yeah. And so why are they being able to write something that's so succinct and penetrating about love, but they can't make it last? And even Ken Wilber in Grace and Grit, right? He loses the love of his life, but he's articulating something about love. And I think that that's an important component of it, because it's indicating that we only know love fully in the breaking of it. Because even if we're madly in love, like one man, one way, we're here together right to the end. And even at the moment of death, we're exiting alone, right? And so there is this appreciation that is bittersweet and melancholic that is written into all these love stories: Titanic, Romeo and Juliet, Grace and Grit, right? that I think indicates, the power of what this experience is. So I think for me as a boy, I was saying, well, what is really going on here, And then I wanted to look into it. And so then I started interviewing people in this series, The 8 Questions,
Right.
and was interviewing all these different people from, psychology and sports and media and art, and people in burned alive and people in prison and people who really got it right and people who got it wrong. And
It's crazy what you're talking about, where these people are so eloquent and, describing everything so perfectly, and they can't experience it themselves. Do you think this has all helped you personally with relationships, the awareness?
Enormously.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has.
So
I mean,
good.
it's interesting, right? Because like as we grow, every solution, right, introduces a new problem or a new challenge, right? We, even as a species, as a world, as a family, as an individual, as a couple, right? We discover something new, and then now there's a new challenge to overcome. And so there are different challenges for sure, right? And a woman, the female archetype is really a mystery in this spectacular way. And if I can go into that for a second, like the male and female archetype, it's interesting because I'll have people who will, come into my office and we'll look at like, okay, what's going on in this relationship right now? I want to preface
You're like a therapist, really. I mean,
it started for me in psychology and in an office on Lasky Drive by the
Mm-hmm.
Peninsula Hotel. And then during the shutdown that stopped. And so I moved everything to my house, and it's super high functioning individuals, couples, but selective people who really have the courage that want to go deep, right? And it's very interesting because Sam Altman did an interview recently with Elon Musk and was talking about how the number of people are using ChatGPT as a therapist and who are committing suicide,
my
right?
God.
And you look at the numbers where like Grok, or different AI services are great for saying how clean is the water today, or how do I fix my blender, or what happened, some sort of research in history. But as in therapy or medical, I'm sure it's enormously valuable to look at certain things about the skin or about the flesh or about the muscles at some juncture or another that we need to reference those things, right? But as a tool for depth psychology, it's proven to be the opposite.
Yeah. I wouldn't think it would be good.
It's bad.
Yeah.
Because it's about looking at these things that are invisible, that are inside, and how do we touch those? So with, in a relationship, the male-female archetype is really beautiful to sort of understand what's happening on a kind of cosmic level. How do I fit into that? And then how can I apply that to my relationship with my wife or my husband? Mm-hmm. And I think about the male archetype being the sun and the female archetype being the earth, right? And the earth is amazing because that's where all the fruit comes from. That's just like, that gives everything. Like, it's spectacular. Mm-hmm. Like the earth can create everything, and it's just out there floating around. But it needs the sun to shine on it, right? To do that, right? And the sun is so powerful and spectacular and strong, right? And it's lights up, but to produce fruit, it needs the earth. It needs the earth, And the more it shines on the earth, the more fruit comes out, so to speak, right? Archetypally. And the more it does that, the happier it gets, and the more fruit comes out. And so this is really what occurs in this male-female relationship, right? Mm-hmm. That the sun shines and lights her up, and then she becomes more beautiful, and the sun shines stronger and stronger, right? And you experience this in a depth love relationship. And I think that also exploring that on a level, with kids is important, because the relationship with the kids, obviously the strongest, most important component is the relationship between the two parents, or between the female and male archetype. That so much of that later in life becomes
modeled
completely.
Yeah.
Do I feel like the relationship between the sun and the moon are okay? The sun's going to come up tomorrow. It's going to set. It's going to come up. It's going to set. The world is stable here on the earth. And a child cannot be told that. It's not conscious. It's just felt. And if that environment between the two is created, right, in the home front, then the child breathes at ease, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They're more content and less anxious. So you study love from a psychological perspective and philosophical perspective, which is a depth that a lot of people don't go into. What do you feel like people get wrong, most of the time with love when you come at it from that perspective?
Evolution is amazing, and the human species is so spectacular.
Yeah.
And so the impulses that we have, like to mate, romantic love, certainly creatively, we see someone and we can't help, I experience it all the time. You meet someone and you think, all right, oh my God. And then you find, no, it's not like that at all, you know?
Yeah.
And that's why some people are succeeding dating online, but so many people are failing. And then you see people will be dating online for 5 years, a decade even, and just saying, you know, and you see this in big cities like Houston, Chicago, New York, Dallas, Los Angeles, Miami, where you'll see a number of women in their late 30s and men in their 50s who are saying, okay, now I'm ready for the one. Well, what's been happening for the last few years? You
Wasn't
know,
a priority.
Right. You know, in other words, to commit, right? And the point is that you go in with depth, you go in to commit, right? And different things open up. In other words, everybody can hold their breath, let's say, and go 10 feet underwater. And that's a wonderful thing. And we can share that with a lot of people. At 50 feet, very few people. At 100 feet, now very, very few people. At 200 feet, very few people. But what the subtlety of the conversation about what it is to be at 200 feet is so profound that once you touch that, when someone's touched that, you don't want anything else. And that's depth love, right? That ability. It's like for you, you know, you have this amazing relationship with your wife, you know, and the devotion that you give to that is by saying, no, I want to be at this level. I'm going to risk, I'm going to be courageous, you know, and to be around you guys, I see that. And it's a great reference point for what's possible. So I think a lot of times the mistake people make is that they have this ideal about what this other is going to be and how it's going to fix them and make their life great. Whereas really the question is to say, you know, for someone out there who is not in relationship, to say, okay, what is this ideal person who I want to be with? Okay, great. Good to have an idea at least, right? It might look like that, it might not. But now the question is to say, am I that person's ideal?
Oh yeah, it's twice as hard having two people working both ways.
Yeah.
And you know, and people also, I think I've seen in my life where there's the person who wants to change the other person, or the expectation that they can be changed, and maybe they're hardwired in such a way that that's not possible. And you know, at the very beginning of a relationship, a lot of times there's the posturing, there's the the acting, there's you don't really know who you're with until you go through 4 seasons or go through some events. So it takes a little while. At least that's my experience. And trust is such a big, important part of relationships for me. And I always say it's the most important currency of any relationship, because without that, there's no relationship, whether it's friendship, business, spousal, boyfriend, girlfriend, anything.
Agreed. And it becomes, because otherwise the relationship is a facade.
Yeah, it is.
You know, people think about trust as something like, oh, you got to have this person's got to have your back. No, it's really about saying, I'm having clarity with this other person. That I'm going to divulge and share my weaknesses, my fears, and our trust is predicated on that. We're stepping into this unknown together, and we're going to discover, I'm going to get to know you, but I'm also going to get to know me through you. Right. So this is going to be scary, but we're going to agree to tell the truth all the way. Absolutely. And if we can't tell the truth about something small, we're certainly not going to be able to tell the truth when it gets scary. So I agree. Trust is the root foundation. I'm here with Sebastian Siegel. This is Dr. Garth Fisher on The Cutting Edge, and we're talking about love right now. He's an expert in consciousness and studied a lot about love. We've been talking about the different stages of love. And, you know, I think that what you're talking about is true. And once you allow yourself to go through that door of vulnerability where you're, you know, filleting yourself open and you're exposing yourself, there's such a deeper reward for that, you know, emotionally and physically too. And I think it's a really important part that maybe some people stop on, you know, they're not able to do that. Would you agree? Yeah. Yeah, I think that, you know, this, and also the sensibility about people wanting to be involved and have been, let's say, not successful dating online. This idea of, okay, if I want to be with a person who's like this, what do I need to be for that person? Because I've either got to change what I want, right? Or I've got to change myself. And you've got to be authentic. Yeah. Definitely. But being vulnerable, I think, is actually a strength. You know, that's a strength that people have to find, you know, in a relationship. Okay, so let's change gears a little bit. You're an acclaimed filmmaker. Your movie Grace and Grit premiered at the Chinese Theater, IMAX, screening at the Mexican Consulate and being one of the top trending love stories movies in Latin America. And I know I watched it. I thought it was just fantastic. What, you know, how did that start? How did you develop that, you know, movie, and how did you decide to go in that direction? You know, I had read all of Ken Wilber's books. I had this, like, as a reader, this love affair with Alan Watts's work, you know, and I read all his books and listened to all his talks, and he passed away obviously a long time ago. But I thought, wow, if he was alive, I'd like go to his boat in Sausalito, California, and like pick barnacles off the boat, like anything to learn from him. You know, most of the authors at that juncture, at least that I was reading, were dead. And then I started reading Ken Wilber's books, and they were thick and slower reads. And I just fell in love with his work. I was like, wow, this is so radical. Like he's just brilliant and mapping, really. He's a mapper of sort of the consciousness of God, if you will, the kind of evolution of everything, not just physicality, but spirit and mind and, you know, all sort of human and conscious output. And I was blown away by his books. And then eventually I really wanted to meet him. He's very hard to meet. And we met and we really hit it off. And at that point,
you just call him up, say, I want to come spend time with you, or what?
For years.
Yeah.
And he was so hard to get in touch with. It was like he doesn't, you know, he lives in Colorado and he just never leaves, right? He's just writing, basically. You know, and I was seeing all these people in the world, some of the most influential people, leaders of governments, a lot of the most brilliant people in the world in media and politics were reading him. And a lot of books, right, by authors like, you know, Eckhart Tolle or Don Miguel Ruiz or Marianne Williamson or Tony Robbins or, you know, Jordan Peterson or, you know, from who you mentioned earlier from Lakewood Church, the pastor, Joel Osteen. You know, the power of a lot of these books is that anybody can pick them up and get something out of it right away, right? And there's a lot to be said for that. With Ken's books, there's a requisite of having read a dozen or 100 other books first. So his books aren't for a broad pop audience, but they're really spectacular. So I went in deep and I read a bunch of his books and just was blown away and then was trying to meet him. Eventually we met and we were simpatico. And then he gave me an interview in the 8 questions, and it's beautiful. If you go the 8 questions on YouTube, I just ask him one question: what's God? And it's a 17-minute answer, and it's spectacular. It's such an unbelievable interview. It's unbelievable. And so then later, I read Grace and Grit, and I put it down, and part of me was just devastated. And I was crying, and I was like, wow. But another part of me was uplifted, like totally blown away and full of hope. And I thought, what is that? Why is part of me devastated and the other part of me is uplifted? And I need to get to the bottom of that. Kind of like you feel when you watch Titanic, right? And I thought, well, the part of me that's devastated is this little me here now that wants the love to go on, that wants for me to keep experiencing it. It's selfish on some level, right? But beautiful, right?
Natural,
yes. But the other part of me, this sort of transcendent part, that part of us, me, that identifies with something greater, that goes on forever, with soul, with spirit, with God, what have you, that part was thrilled because it got to taste something so beautiful in experiencing Titanic or Romeo and Juliet or Grace and Grit, in this case, the book for me of Grace and Grit, that says, wow, that's possible. That's a reference point for what's possible. This is going to crucify me, but wow, I want to go there. Like I have to go there. That's part of this human experience. And this experience that I'm having as a human won't be fully robust unless I get to experience that. And so I just thought, guys, this is going to make an amazing movie. And then at that juncture, there were other producers and directors and other people touching that. And then a few years later, it hit me and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I said to Ken Wilber, I said, you know, what's the status of this? And he checked in on it and he said, you know, you can do this. And so I said, I'm going to do this. And it was less of a conscious choice, more of something that I just had to do. It was like, it felt like it chose me.
Was it a fun experience for you? You enjoyed it?
It was amazing.
And where can the viewers watch this movie? How can they find it?
In the U.S., it's on Apple and Amazon. Okay. And then internationally, in most territories, it's on Netflix.
Grace and Grit. And how long is it?
It's an hour, 45 minutes. And the first 20 minutes is really dreamy. The middle hour, it's like Philadelphia, right? That movie with Denzel. And it's heart-wrenching. And then the last 30 minutes is, as you know, it's like nothing that I don't think has ever been done in a movie before, that I really wanted to do something special in that last 20, 30 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, it was... happy, sad, inspiring, and devastating at the same time. I mean, everything was mixed in there, and you did it very, very well. So I know there's some new projects coming up, and I want to get to those. And you also had the TED Talk on the driving forces of your life and love and how those are interacted in the 5 stages of love. How can people find that talk that you gave?
Just search TEDx, TED Talk, Sebastian Siegel. It'll come up. It's TEDx specific.
And when did you do that?
Just a few months ago, and then just released recently, like about a month and a half ago.
That's exciting, fantastic. And so now, after Grace and Grit, what are you working on? Is there something new in the horizon for you?
Yes, I'm working on 2 things. One is a movie true story. Also, all the films I do, like Grace and Grit, is a true story. And watching that in the credits, you see the real people next to the actors and such, and original video, old video footage, right, of the woman in the credits in Grace and Grit. I'm doing a movie now called Labyrinth and the Youngest Grandmaster, and it's about the last youngest chess grandmaster. His name's Abhimanyu Mishra. So for people who are familiar, let's say, with Bobby Fischer, right, who was a phenomenon, he
My
became
uncle.
Your uncle?
Bobby Fischer. I'm Dr. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
That's right.
No, I can't. My wife plays chess. I can't play chess. But go ahead. I know you play with Manny Pacquiao all the time.
It's true. Okay, I started playing with Manny. He's very good. Bobby Fischer became youngest grandmaster at 15, right? And then he went on, whatever X number of years later to become the greatest in the world and really one of the greatest ever. And the record that was held for this boy just before he turned 13, who was Russian, held the record for 19 years, right? Almost 20 years. And Abhimanyu Mishra won it at 12 and a half. And so he broke this record that was held for 19 years. And it's a story that takes place during the shutdown, before and during the shutdown, of his devotion to chess, and him and his father, this Indian family living in America. So it's really a story about the American dream. And it's a story also about sort of devotion and sacrifice. But it also tells the story about chess, obviously, like Queen's Gambit, which a lot of people have seen.
Great.
Oh, and amazing. One of the greatest shows I've ever seen. And so this is totally true story. And it also shows the history of chess and how it evolved from these sort of maps of the battlefield in India. And this story in the Mahabharata, the great epic of India, the boy Abhimanyu is the son of Arjuna, the hero of the Mahabharata, and our boy Abhimanyu and his namesake Abhimanyu. And Abhimanyu dies on the battlefield at 16 in the Mahabharata. And there's this relationship with battle and with war and with devotion and with surrender and with sacrifice. So that's the thematic that I'm weaving on a larger picture. In a more simple way, it's this boy's race with his father to become youngest grandmaster, right, in history, which he eventually achieves. So it's a story about the American dream also.
How do you weave the psychology and the philosophy into a storytelling, cinematic journey on movie?
Thank you for that. In Grace and Grit, I use her, as you saw, she's on this hill going up towards this sort of biblical tree and ends up in the rain. And him, it's in his dreams, he's underwater and is going for the surface. So they're sort of looking for each other in their dreams, right? And in this case, I'm telling a story present day of our boy playing chess all over the world. And then I'm also telling this story 6,000 years ago, the story of the Mahabharata, and this story in India 6,000 years ago, and this sort of epic journey. So this namesake, this one sort of boy, if you will, in these two worlds, and what the challenges are and how they mirror each other.
It's great. It's kind of a theme with your productions where you really get drawn in. It's a very deep movies. When do you think this is going to come out, or what stage are you in with this?
I optioned the story with my partner, and I wrote then the story of what it looks like as a movie. And so now I have a couple different management firms and other individuals who are potential partners that I'm exploring right now. And this is an interesting film because as a producer, there's sort of this intersection between art and business in a movie, right? And when I went into Grace and Grit, I wanted to make a very conservative film financially because it's a niche product, right? It's a niche film, and I wanted to tell this.
But why is it niche?
Story.
Why
Grace and Grit?
Yeah, why would you say it's niche?
Thank you. It's a beautiful story for everyone. Right.
It's like the love letter. What was that? The love letter?
Yeah.
What was that called?
With Hilary Swank?
Yeah.
That one? Yeah, I love that movie. She was so good in it.
I mean,
people want something that's easier, and there's a portion of Grace and Grit, the middle hour, if you will, that's kind of like Philadelphia. That's heart-wrenching. And people see the trailer and they're like, oh my God, that looks so good and devastating. I cried during the trailer, but I can't do it. I can't do it. I got to watch a rom-com kind of thing. Yeah. But everyone who goes in, like you see on Amazon, people are like, oh my God, this movie blew me away.
They're rewarded by the ending.
Yes. But that's the same thing. It's interesting because it dovetails back to the top of our conversation about depth of love and relationship. So many people are single because they just want a little bit. They just, I want to be with a great guy, great woman. I want it to be fun and happy, and that's it. I'm done with that. Where somebody, like you've procured this unbelievable relationship with your wife because you guys are both in it. You're saying, look, and I'm in this. I want to feel it all, and it's the same thing I think with the content we consume, right? Also, So I do like to tell this story of transcendence. In this story about the youngest grandmaster, about Abhimanyu Mishra, as a producer, I'm looking at, chess is hugely popular in China and in Russia and in India. Everybody is chess literate when they grow up. And now in America, the Queen's Gambit has indicated that there's a market for that here as well. So for me as director, producer, and writer, I'm marrying these two worlds of business, and artistry. One of them is thematically, what's the story I'm telling, the plot and the theme, and then also what is this as an output, because this is a much larger film. This is a very big film.
Did you look for this topic, or did it find you and you just thought this is what I need to go with next?
It's a great question. I was with my partner, Srikanth Bangalore, who's a brilliant chess businessman, and he created this company, 1,000 Grandmasters, that gives a pathway to kids to be able to become chess masters or advanced level players or even grandmasters that doesn't cost $250,000, like going to the Olympics and having to fly all over the world. He's creating essentially chess competitions all over the world. All over the world.
No, but where is he located?
He's here in LA.
Okay.
And so we started talking about, hey, we really need to do a chess movie. Like, there hasn't been a great chess movie. Like, Queen's Gambit is amazing. And there's Queen of Kache's excellent chess movie. And Searching for Bobby Fischer. There's been a few.
It's Dr. Garth Fisher, The Cutting Edge. I'm speaking with Sebastian Siegel. Go ahead.
So there's been a few great chess movies, but nothing that was just like an epic, that was a standalone film right outside of the Queen's Gambit that was a series. And so I was looking at sort of, there's different, Charles Paul Morphy, who's very similar to Bobby Fischer, a long time ago, one of the greats. And Bobby Fischer, but it's been done. It also ends so rough for Bobby Fischer. He kind of loses his mind.
Is he alive still?
No, he passed, but he's, he at the end he kind of was, went a little insane and was just so aggressive that it became sort of hard. How do you wrap that story up? So then my partner and I were talking about Abhimanyu, and it was like, wow, this is an amazing story. And it spoke to me because my father was a professor of Indian religions, and so I'm so familiar with these epics, and I thought this is a huge opportunity to tell a uniquely American story that's also fundamentally Indian as well. Right. Yeah, and then with this Indian iconography.
So how good are you how long have you been playing chess?
Since I was 4.
Okay, so how advanced are you? Are you a grandmaster yet? No?
I'm basic. I mean,
you can't be basic by
I
now.
mean, there's a lot of levels, right? There's a lot of levels. Like the guys who come over to my house, they can play with me with their eyes closed. They know the game so well. And I have been playing with different people. I mean, Jamie Foxx and I have played. He's very, very good. I've been playing recently. Manny Pacquiao's wonderful. He's an outstanding player. We've been playing. I haven't played with Arnold yet, but we talked about it recently. Schwarzenegger, he's been playing, his whole life. And I think of chess as like, in the same way we were talking about physicality earlier, it doesn't matter good, bad. It's just great to play. It's so great neurologically, and I have to play in person. And when you play in person, what's amazing about that game is it doesn't matter like what ethnicity, what socioeconomic level, old, young, male, female, doesn't matter. Like two people can sit down and play this game.
Right.
And have a conversation of certain kind of language with no barriers, then no luck involved, which is pretty profound. Yeah, it's pretty wonderful.
I hear it's a good game, I played it one time. I'm terrible. I don't want to start. I don't think I'd be good. It's kind of like golf to me. So these movies that you've made and you're making, are they changing you personally? I'm sure you're growing from them. I mean, you're drawn in, you're creating these stories and you're living them. And tell me how it's affected you, or which ones have affected you in what way.
Thank you for that. I think that theme runs through all these things, right? Whether it's, business or movies or psychology, consciousness, and athleticism, certainly. Like, you are one of the greatest surgeons in the world, right? And everybody knows who you are, and they want to come to you, and I see people are like, oh my God, Garth's gonna, help me with my breast. This girl, she was so through the roof, and her whole world is devoted around that, right? And I see also like the integrity that you bring, to the world around you, the generosity that you give to your friends, the way you host, the husband you are to your wife, to your kids, etc. And so obviously maybe it's hard to track in a specific way, but my devotion to these films, to this film, I intuit that I'm going to grow, and that growth comes from commitment and depth. And I just, at the top end, I say, this is beautiful. This is a beautiful thing, and I'm in. I'm in. I don't care if it breaks me, I'm in. And it requires that, right? To become as successful as you are, right?
Well, thank you for the compliments, by the way. And I see with the passion that you have, the way you talk, and through your films, the one that I've seen and the one that I'm very much looking forward to now. But you know, you've been described as intense, and you have to be intense. You have to be intense if you want to cross the finish line first, right? At whatever field you're in. What fuels you to keep this intensity to move through these different sectors, areas of what you're exploring?
This life is so fleeting and it just goes by in an instant, you know, and it's just, I think the confrontation with mortality is so important. And the younger an individual is, the sooner they can become aware of that. Like, life is just so fragile. And then the ability to say, I'm here for one more instant, really. Maybe it's a year, maybe it's 100 years, whatever the thing is, but I'm here for one instant. And the ability to show up and serve and lift people up and forge relationships and see things open up to new precipices and understand and comprehend things and feel things experientially in a new way is so profound. And I want that so much. And this is my chance to taste that in this life.
Right. So
I want to do that.
That's right. Yeah, you're lucky that you learned this at a younger age. I'm sure you're like 29. You look. That's the plastic surgeon in me looking at you. You look so. This very handsome guy by the people on radio that are not able to see this, but yeah, you're lucky that you've been able to really be in this field that you're so successful at. It's Dr. Garth Fisher. I'm here on the cutting edge with Sebastian Siegel. He's an acclaimed filmmaker. He's a keynote speaker, TEDx talker, and he's just full of a lot of wisdom and knows about, expert on consciousness and love. He was a filmmaker with the movie Grace and Grit, which was amazing. I think people should watch. I heavily recommend that one. And then you also just did the eight question series. The 8 question series. What's that? It sounds so compelling and fun, really.
You know, it was fun to make too, that one, and it's on YouTube, and you just search the 8 questions, spelled out EIGHT, the 8 questions series, and there are people in there from media and sports, and people burned alive, and people worth over $1 billion, and people who were in prison, and all sorts of things. And some leaders in different fields. I love that. It's questions. It's the same 8 questions for everyone, which is, what's the purpose of life? What's love? What's heaven? What's hell? What's intimacy? What's God? What's religions? And what's spirituality? So those 8 questions. And I chose those questions because they're questions that don't have a final answer, right, but that we have to keep asking, which is why there are so many books and are so many love stories and are so many love songs and are so many movies and paintings, that we have to ask this to ourselves again all the time, right? Participating with our significant others in our world. Like, what is this? What's happening here? What am I doing?
It's fascinating. Here? What a great idea and great questions, because they are unknowns, and it's a perception, of what you really think and feel yourself and through your life experiences. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but go ahead.
That's on point, that they're, like you said, they're unknown in some way. That language liberates us as much as it limits us, right? Language is amazing, but then sometimes we are at a space where, which is like what sex is on the deepest level, right? Love making, it's really, we're communicating in ways that are nonverbal, right? That so much of communication is, and that, obviously as a brilliant surgeon, there are things that intuitively you get in there, you say, no, this isn't right, I got to do something differently. And the same thing in our relationship, like with your child or with your wife or with you say, no, I intuit, I know this thing. In other words, something strikes us before it strikes us cognitively. And I even think about, thoughts. Where do thoughts come from, right? They don't come from our head. They don't come from up here. They don't come from us. In other words, they come through us. And this ability to surrender allows us to be great at football or basketball or loving or cooking or being a surgeon or being a filmmaker or being a storyteller. It's allowing ourselves, it's discipline and preparation, but then allowing ourselves to surrender and let something else take over, God, spirit, whatever this thing is, right? Our intuition. And so in the 8 questions, that's the deepest thing that I'm looking at there. I'm trying to get to the crux of that. So for example, in that, we've got MMA legends like Jorge Gracie and Ken Shamrock, or surfing legends like Makua Rothman and Laird Hamilton, or I've got Francis Fisher in there, and the brilliant billionaire and museum heir and art collector Eugenio Lopez. and a young kid who was burned alive, and then a guy who was burned alive and died and came back. And so there's some really extraordinary individuals there. Dr. James Hollis, the founder of the Jung Center, Ken Wilber is in there, Stuart Davis. And so I'm really looking at sort of these questions from these people's insight and their specialty, if you will. So the question, for example, what is heaven or what is hell? The real question I'm asking when I was shooting that is, if there's one moment that was heaven-like or hellish, and if you could perpetuate that, into an eternity and had to live in that would be like heaven-like or hell-like, what would that moment be? And so in a lot of ways, like Laird Hamilton, for instance, is describing love and relating it for him, the most personal thing in his life, to surfing. And he's relating it to what it is to ride a wave and the surrender that it takes and the courage that it takes. That for him is how he sees love. And that was really helpful for me because I'm a deep ocean swimmer. And I thought, yeah, there's moments when I'm out in the ocean and I'm a mile out swimming and I feel like this is going to kill me. I'm going to drown. I'm going to lose myself. But and then all of a sudden I float to the surface and it's okay. And I think that depth love requires that. It demands that of us because, as in the TED Talk, these deeper forces that are driving our life are asking us, what is the world asking of me, right? And on some level, right, it's asking us to say, I give up all of me to be here and to be part of this thing, to support this thing, which I think, we're all drawn to these movies like Braveheart, or Gladiator, right? Or even Top Gun, right? Or even the superhero movies that on the
Heroes.
Big time, and the hero is really the individual who can transmute pain and confusion into productivity and service, right? And when Joseph Campbell talks about that, he's really talking about that, like follow your bliss. He's not saying do what you want, which is how it's interpreted by a lot of people. He's saying do what you must. In other words, your bliss is close your eyes, feel it. And what must I do today? Not what do I want to do. Like I want to just sit home and eat Doritos and watch TV, but what must I do? Well, I must start this venture, this business, this relationship, this work. I must go do this simple thing. I must go do I must. I can feel it intuitively. I neglect that. Oh, I'm neglecting something deep in my soul.
Yeah, it has to come from deep in your soul because on the surface, there's things that I must do that are very much different than what I want to do and what I wish to do. But it's so fascinating, and I love what you're doing with those 8 questions. I'm going to really tune in and watch that because that's really something that interests me. But it's so interesting how our experiences and our personalities, our thoughts, and the way we look at things is so blended from life's experiences. And I think genetics also. I had a mentor that told me that it's interesting that your offspring will usually accept even the taste buds of a mother or father. One likes sour, one's like sweet, one likes this. It's interesting. So I kind of look at that from a genetic standpoint also.
With the 8 questions, some of those episodes are 5 minutes long.
Yeah.
And like Roy Yamaguchi, the chef who created Roy's, his is like 5 minutes. And some of those interviews are 28 minutes long. So they're like mini TED Talks. So if someone's looking at it and they go on the 8 questions, the IGHT series, they can then just choose one.
Yeah.
Or like little, listen to or watch.
Well, I like that you got different disciplines because you must have gotten a variety of answers.
Yeah.
And I can imagine somebody that's come back from death and a UFC fighter and somebody who's a philosopher and somebody who's very, very religious. The variety of answers must be really entertaining and cause, evoke more thought and discussion, I guess. I'm here with Sebastian Siegel, who it's hard to defy what he does. He does so much and does so much very well. But we've been talking about love and the things he's accomplished. He's a acclaimed filmmaker and TEDx speaker, keynote speaker. So what else? What advice would you feel? I think this is an important question for you, especially from your perspective. So what advice would you give to somebody who's disconnected from their body or disconnected from their feelings, either through trauma or just unaware of, this might be in a relationship, might be, his health, his physicality, what's your advice for that?
It's a great question because there are long-term solutions and short-term. And I think the short-term is just as important because if we can't fix it short-term, we can't fix it long-term. And the short-term is really engagement, right? That we don't get, a lot of times people think, well, let's just rest. And rest is important for recovery and these kinds of things. But we get engaged, we get energy from engaging in life, not from pulling back. You know, we get engagement, we show up and we do manual labor, we help someone dig a ditch, and like all of a sudden it's so exhausting, but we feel energized. You know, we show up for someone that we care about, and we get energized because what's occurring there is God or Spirit is now amplifying through us, and I think that's written, you know, pre-atomically, if you will. Yeah, that's written into us so deeply. And so the first thing is really just showing up and just service and just contribution. It can be simple. It's like, I'm feeling disconnected, I'm feeling numb, I'm feeling apathy, I'm feeling indifference. I'm going to go exercise and I'm just going to connect, let's say, with someone. Then later in the day, and I'm just going to listen. I'm just going to hold eye contact, you know, and I'm really going to just try to feel what the person is saying. And I'm just going to ask questions to the person. That's such a simple, fundamental thing that sounds so easy, but is so rewarding. Yeah. And then I think you know, one would be engagement, two would be listening and really, really listening, all open. And then I think a third is saying, okay, I'm going to just be grateful. You know, that's something so powerful. I like to start and end my day. You know, before I fall asleep, I'm thinking about what am I so grateful? Just moments in this.
That's a very important point. Yeah.
You know, and that's an entry point. And I think that's a rapid connection with Spirit, with God. You know, in other words, that we then open up to that, the power of that energy. And it's ironic because most people will watch a movie like Braveheart, let's say, you know, or Star Wars or something and say, wow, how? And what do all these people have in common? They all have in common this ability to say, you know what? I'm not the most important thing that's happening here. There's something bigger, and I want to participate in that. And participating in that big thing starts off with one little thing right here and now, just showing up a little bit for someone, just being super grateful, or just participating in something. You know?
You have to be active and willing. So you talk about the driving forces in our life, the invisible driving forces in our life on your TED Talks. What does that mean exactly?
The great union questions, really, that the idea is that we start every day and that everybody on some level feels inside, aware of it or not, that am I enough for the world? Like, well, will I be able to do this relationship with my lover, with my parent, with my friends, with my business, with my vocation? Will I be able to be enough, you know? And abandonment also, you know, will the world hold me? Was this person going to leave me? You know, whatever, my parents or my friends or my lover, whatever, will they leave me or die? You know,
Right.
like, so this question of abandonment and overwhelmment, right, are the two core, you know, sort of in Carl Jung's sense. And beyond that, right, we look at this kind of archetypally, like what's really going on? What is this human experience, right? And there are these invisible forces that are indeed driving our lives. And, you know, to touch on, like, let's say the abandonment one, you know, for a second, that I think in Western culture, people really look at that to say, well, I'm feeling anxious or I'm feeling, you know, abandonment. Why, right? Well, life is that, you know, from the moment we're in the womb and then it's separation. We exit the womb. It's like, that's the first thing is
Right.
separation. And then the next thing, the umbilical cord's cut, and then it's like feed from the breast, right? And then it's like, oh my God, everything to just get the breast.
Right.
And babies will even do a kick, like this little squat to crawl up the mother to get to the breast, right? And then eventually it's like the breast is gone and the mother's not looking at me. It's abandonment.
The
after
breast is never gone, coming from a plastic surgery. Go ahead.
you know, it's like this is what we're born with, right? And so then the value behind that, the acceptance that is saying, oh, I'm supposed to hurt. Well, okay, it's not about make it better, which is this sort of Western pop psychology ideology online that you see so much prescriptive that leads to deeper depression. It's saying, I'm supposed to hurt. Well, how do I embody that and use that force to transmute, to become the hero? So there are these invisible forces that are driving our lives, and there are definite ways to get in touch with those and to reconcile those in a way to become more dexterous and more powerful. And I cover that very deeply in that TED Talk.
Well, you're a fascinating human and a great guy and a wonderful speaker. And I love the advice and all the things that you shared with us today. And I hope people, you know, watch the movie and they watch your talks and your items. How best can they find you again for the audience?
I message back everybody on Instagram, Sebastian Siegel 1, and then on my website, which is sebastiansiegel.com, and deeplyconscious.com for people who are particularly interested in psychology.
Okay, fantastic. And you're based in Los Angeles, but you go internationally, or?
Sometimes, yes.
Sometimes you do. It's been fascinating. Great talking to you. And I want to get you on here again, and I can't wait to. I hope everybody watches that movie, and I want to be the first one to hear when this movie's out, the new one on your chess, the chess movie. But thank you very much. It's Dr. Garth Fisher on the Cutting Edge. Been talking with Sebastian Siegel, and I want to thank all of our listeners.
Garth, thanks so much for having me. It's such a pleasure
Thank
to be
you.
here with you.
It's a pleasure being here with you. It's great. Yeah, thank you.